Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Judges chapter 8. We're going to be starting in verse 24 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, Thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Last lesson we left off with Gideon defeating the Midianites and dealing with Zebah and Zalmunna, executing judgment upon them. Then the children of Israel, they come to Gideon and they want him to be their king. Gideon says, no, I'm not going to be your king. Neither will any of my sons or grandsons be your king. And he points them in the right direction, and he says basically God should be your king. He is your king, and you should honor him as your king. And then we pick up now in verse 24. Verses 24 to 27, let's read them. And it says, And Gideon said unto them, I would desire a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his prey. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and did cast therein every man the earrings of his prey. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides ornaments and collars and purple raiment that was on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were about the camels' necks. And Gideon made an ephod thereof, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went thither a whoring after it, which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house. Now, it has been said that because of the wrong step of one man, that many will be led into wrong ways. Although Gideon made a good decision to refuse becoming their king and pointing them to the one who should be their true king, which is God, yet now Gideon is going to make a big mistake. He asks for the earrings of the Midianites and the Amalekites that were killed in this battle. The children of Israel were more than willing to give them to Gideon. Now remember, it was Aaron who asked for the earrings of the children of Israel, and he made a golden calf from those earrings. And now in verse 26, it says Gideon ended up with way more than what he asked for. He asked for the earrings of the prey, and they gave him a lot more than what he had asked for. We can understand Gideon wanting to set up some kind of a memorial of the victory over the Midianites and the Amalekites, but not an ephod. An ephod was only to be worn by the high priest. And it seems that Gideon's ephod was mainly made of gold. In verse 27, he makes this ephod, then he puts it in his hometown of Ophrah, probably with the altar that he set up after he tore down his father's altar to Baal. So he makes this ephod, and he sets it up in Ophrah, and again, more than likely, it is by or right at the altar that he set up unto the Lord after he tore his father's altar down. The Ark of the Covenant was still in Shiloh, and in the book of Judges, Shiloh and the Ark are not spoken of very much at all. Shiloh was in Ephraim's land, and it was not far from where Ophrah was. Is it possible that because of the argument that Ephraim had with Gideon, that Gideon just didn't really want to go to Shiloh to consult God because of the possible negativity that he may get from the Ephraimites. And that's possible. It's possible he's like, well, you know what? I got a lot of guff from the Ephraimites winning this battle. I mean, delivering them from 7 years of oppression. And what do I get? I get arguments. And now, the ark and the tabernacle of Moses is in Shiloh. Shiloh is in Ephraim. And I just really have no desire to go into the land of Ephraim, to go to God's house there to consult him. But there was one altar unto God, and one high priest that served God and served the people, and they were both in Shiloh. So remember, there is an altar unto God, but that altar is in Shiloh, in the land of Ephraim. It seems that Gideon was setting up an alternative place for God to communicate with him and maybe with other people. But Gideon's altar and his ephod are no different than the high places that the children of Israel worshipped at. Basically, Gideon's altar, if in his mind he's deciding, I don't really feel like going to Shiloh to consult God, I'm going to make myself almost kind of like Micah in chapters 17 and 18 of Judges here, where he sets up his own altar, gets his own priest and gets all the garments, and he has his own little communication with God there. And this seems to be a little bit maybe what Gideon is doing. He's got the altar unto God, and now he's got the ephod that only the high priest wears, and it seems like he's setting himself up where God can communicate with him there in Ophrah. The high places were nothing more than elevated locations at which people worshipped idols. They started with the Canaanites before Israel took the promised land, and they continued with the Israelites after they adopted Baal worship. So the high places in Israel were there before they took the promised land, and they were there after. And the reason why they were there after is because the children of Israel decided to worship idols and to continue on worshiping at these high places. What Gideon is doing is in the likeness of a high place. The children of Israel turned that seeming good intention by Gideon, and they turned it into an idol. Instead of Gideon leading them away from idolatry to start keeping the law, making a reformation in Israel, he unintentionally leads them back into idolatry. And I said this before in other lessons. Gideon should have continued his work among the children of Israel and led them back to the law of God, and done away with all idols, done away with any high places in the promised land. But he never did it. And now he had unintentionally, he develops, in a sense, a high place where his idol, he didn't want it to be an idol, but the idol that he created unintentionally, the ephod, that it became a snare to them. The idolatry that was in their heart, in the children of Israel's hearts before the Midianites came, and also after the Midianites started to strip the land, was that idolatry that was still in their hearts was just waiting for an opportunity to express itself. Gideon's sin led to a much greater sin. When Gideon should have led them to the altar of God at Shiloh, the children of Israel had no delight to seek God, but instead they sought after Gideon's ephod. Now, let's read verse 28. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted up their heads no more, and the country was in quietness 40 years in the days of Gideon. Now, as I mentioned several lessons ago, the Midianites will not be heard from ever again. They were so humiliated by Gideon and the 300 men that they never really regrouped and attacked anyone anymore. Now, let's read verses 29 to 32. And Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten, for he had many wives. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bore him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age, and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Now, the rest of Gideon's life, this is dealing with the rest of Gideon's life and his death. These verses are. At this point, Gideon seems to go home and to settle down and basically to enjoy life. He marries many women, and he has at least one concubine. Now, according to verses 24 to 26, Gideon became very wealthy. Because remember, he asked for the earrings only of the prey, and they gave him much, much more than what he had asked for. He continues to judge Israel for the next 40 years. But a concubine that he had in Shechem bore him a son and named him Abimelech. Now, this is interesting. The actual Hebrew says that Gideon set his name to be Abimelech. It doesn't say he named him Abimelech. It says he set his name was set as Abimelech. Now, what does that mean? The only time this Hebrew word is used is when an additional name is given to someone. So Abimelech had he had a name when he was given a name when he was born. But it wasn't Abimelech, it was something else. We don't know. Doesn't say. So, but Gideon comes along and he renames him Abimelech. So, again, this Hebrew word was also used in 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 34. In Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 7, Daniel chapter 2 verse 7, and also chapter 5 and verse 12. It's a renaming of people. Now, Abimelech, the name Abimelech actually means father of a king. Now, it is possible that Gideon saw qualities in this man as he was growing up, and that he gave him this name, father of a king. And it is possible that this name went to Abimelech's head and may be the reason why he killed Gideon's 70 other sons in verse 30. But there is one more thing that we need to look at, and it's that his mother, she was a concubine. Now, this plays into the factor here. She was a concubine. Now, if we go back to our studies in the book of Judges to chapter 19 and verse 2, we remember that the Levite that had a concubine from Bethlehem, Judah, we said that concubines were basically inferior wives. Both the concubine and the children, that however many children she bore, did not have the same rights and privileges as a proper wife. Concubine children did not inherit anything, only what was given to them as a gift. So if the father wanted to give a gift to the children of the concubine, he could. But other than that, they got nothing when the father died. In fact, this concubine and her son did not even live in the same house as Gideon, but some miles away in Shechem, where Gideon may have gone to judge Israel. Again, it says here he judged Israel for 40 years. Gideon did. So it's possible that he was a traveling judge, that he may have traveled around to different cities and judged Israel. And Shechem was one of them. And of course, one day he goes to Shechem to whatever judge, and he sees this, this pretty woman, and he wants her to be his concubine. Not a wife, but a concubine. And the rest is history. The only way Abimelech would get anything from Gideon would be he'd have to take it. And you know what? Abimelech does. Because the only way he's going to get anything from Gideon's inheritance is he's going to have to actually forcibly take it. And he does. Now, except for Gideon's youngest son, Abimelech has all of the rest killed, and he lays claim as the leader of Israel. Now, Gideon finally, he dies and is buried in his hometown. And again, all of this stuff that happens with Abimelech takes place after Gideon dies. It's not while Gideon is on his deathbed. But Abimelech here, he takes advantage of his position, and he basically seems like his name, his name goes to his head, and he begins to promote himself among the children of Israel. Now we're going to continue next lesson in verse 33, but until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.